all, I would like to enormously thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to be with you. I started my career in my Purvashrama as a lecturer in a college in Delhi University 3 decades back, and I value those years. And I always, even in later years also, I was teaching as a guest faculty in local university. So I always value this profession. It's a noble profession, because you are building the future of the students of this country, building the future of this country. Today on this topic, when I wanted to reflect on it, it's a great opportunity because it's like a master training program. Instead of inviting students or lecturers, they have invited the principals. So essentially it's like a training of trainers, because when you talk to a lecturer, through him or her, you are reaching out to the students. When you reach out to a principal, you are reaching out not just to students, you are reaching out to lecturers and through lecturers a number of students, because you are the leaders. And this is a very artful and very creative decision by this great new institution located in a great academic campus called the BHU. I'm so happy that luckily I'm getting a chance again to interact with academicians and leaders from the northeastern region of the country. Because when I was in the World Bank, I have gone to your different states there, whether it's Mizoram or Nagaland or Assam, and I have always loved being there because of the straightforward, simple-hearted love and affection and the warmth which you have shown. And I personally think the heart of India lies actually in your area, and that's why the Prime Minister has been visiting your country very frequently, your states. You know, to start talking about education, very briefly, because these are introductory remarks, because you have resource persons who want to talk to you, there are two things which are coming to my mind. I have interacted with some of your young students who worked on the HIV/AIDS project. You had a problem in Mizoram, huge problem of drug addiction. And I have talked to some youth. They are in the drug centers and how to reorient the students who are getting into different kinds of intoxications, and also certain parts of Assam. What struck me very clearly, this problem in okay, I'm sorry. So, is there any problem there? मैं उसको ऊपर ले आता हूँ. हाँ, उसमें that's okay, गड़बड़ होता है. You can correct it. Thinking that, you know, we are 75th year of our independence. We are still making a start in certain areas in the day. We have progressed a lot in certain areas. In certain areas, we are just taking baby steps. And the nation building process is at a very advanced stage for certain sections of our society, and it is in a very beginning stage for certain other sections of our society. Some historian had once mentioned about India, that in India you can meet people from different centuries because there are different levels of growth. And you come from an area which is kind of traditionally seen as the periphery of Indian developmental story. And I think you have enormous responsibility on your shoulders. Now, when we are struck with a situation where we have enormous amount of stress because everybody wants some kind of self-expression and sort of celebrate their cultural identity, their own identity, and there's a lot of heavy pressure on the core, on the center, because it's like a mother trying to deal with too many children. Okay, and all of us, as kind of having the responsibility, have to think alike, not saying the same thing, not doing the same thing, addressing different needs for an overall common goal of a nation, in a way where India sort of is able to emanate love and care for the rest of the world. Our nationalism always has been internationalist. I think it would be very useful to look at the beautiful book of Rabindranath Tagore on nationalism and internationalism, and I think you would love to read a few speeches of Swami Vivekananda where he clearly mentions that Indian nationalism is very, very cosmopolitan. Our nationalism is not exclusive. our nationalism is an expression of our love for truth, for humanity, for God, where we don't distinguish between names and forms. And that is the heart and soul of our moral purpose. So, when you are entering into a classroom, you are meeting students. Some are from different, I have worked with, I have very funny past. I was a student of Vivekananda, but I was also a Marxist for a while, and I worked with the church organization. So, I've seen different aspects. I've worked in media for a while, with World Bank for a while. What I've learned all these years is actually the best way to move forward is to take note of who are the people in the room, who's your audience. So if you want to be, I used to do training programs on documentation. What we do is actually audience need assessment. Who are the people you are talking to? Unless you understand that, and what is your audience in Northeast or anywhere, you are coming from the Northeast. You have people from different cultural backgrounds. You go to Nagaland, they have a certain tradition, they have their own beautiful tradition. Or you go to Mizoram, and within Christianity, there are different denominations, right? And their faith systems are all different from one another. And then you have the migrants and who are having Islamic background, then you have among Hindus, you have Saktas, then you have Vaishnavas, right? In Manipur, you have Vaishnavas, and other places you have Saktas. How do we deal with this kind of a diverse situation when you are entering into the classroom? Our purpose is, in fact, to build a strong value system. You want to help people, but then you are in a very stressful situation. So, we have in India right now some people who are only talking about pluralism. And this pluralism, if you only talk about pluralism, there is a doubt and anxiety. Is it about denying who am I? Is it about self-denial? Is it at the cost of my self-identity, self-expression? Right? That is one kind of anxiety. The other one is, the ones who are talking about unity, they are generating anxiety and fear among some people who think we are being excluded. Right? So there is a mutual anxiety, and we have to deal with it. And this is a spiritual challenge. This is an academic challenge. This is a technocratic challenge, because we want to talk about India without ignoring different corners of India, and we are talking about diversity without ignoring the goal of strengthening India. If there is no India, there is no periphery. Without an India, without a garden, there are no flowers. If you destroy the garden, because one corner of that garden has a particular kind of flowers, you want to celebrate its beauty, would you like to destroy the garden? So, you understand why I'm mentioning this, because whenever you open the TV, there's a quarrel going on. There is no academic, no intellectual thinking. It's just a quarrel. And it's not true to our country. There are a lot of psychiatrists in America working on it, because all nations are passing through a kind of cultural rupture, division, hatred, in the name of rights and cultures and stuff like that. They're all divided. It's not about India. So you have enormous responsibility, because teachers, professors, do you know what you are? You are Papa Ma of society. Isn't it? A doctor saves a patient, but you are saving hundreds and thousands of students. You are catering to their emotional, psychological needs. So you have so much of pressure. I thought I would like to have a few words with you. To start with, we have to try and emphasize how to talk about diversity without being antagonistic. Okay? So we need what is called, what I think is that we have to celebrate difference through harmony and strengthen unity by also talking about diversity. And that's a very, very challenging thing. All of you recognize that. So you have one kind of problem which Northeast faced in the 80s and the 90s, which is antagonistic cultural assertion, right? It's my way or highway. And maybe the center also practiced it, but now you are talking about a situation where we can be more sensitive, we can sensitively celebrate our own identity in a way others feel embraced. Is it possible? Can you love your own mother without hating someone else's mother? It's quite possible, isn't it? But would you like to stop loving your mother because others will get offended? That is also a very cruel thing. So, now coming to that particular thing, how we make it possible? every society, every culture has its own epistemic resources, philosophical resources. The tragedy with India is, those of, we have professors from education. I walked through a few, research papers in Calcutta University Ethics Society. In the 1830s and 40s, there was a lot of research where the British thought they had to push away Persian language education and Sanskrit language education because they thought that's a hardship in making the policy of East India Company acceptable to others. So they wanted to have brown Sahibs, what the Americans laughingly call coconut Indians, brown outside, white inside. So they wanted a lot of brown Sahibs and clerks and supporting people, and that happened. They got the results, isn't it? You had a lot of activists from Brahmo Samaj and others. What is the idea of progress? Are you being able to hate your own culture? How much you hate yourself is a sign of your intellectual progress, is a sign of your intellectual maturity. So that particular thing kind of, the whole nation is like a virus. It's like AIDS. You know what is the full form of AIDS? Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. The biggest AIDS happened in the intellectual domain because this virus we captured through our conversations with people who came here on a civilizing mission. You'd be surprised. I studied and I taught political science, and I was a big fan of John Stuart Mill, who wrote that famous book on liberty. Do you know that he worked for the East India Company to justify colonialism? Anybody in political science department, including my friend Srivastava, who is teaching political science, anybody ever told you that John Stuart Mill was a supporter of colonialism? No. Certain things were selectively told to us. They were not told to us all. We were told a partial story so that we accept the Western cultural intellectual tradition as a universal tradition, to the extent that we did not want to talk about our tradition. We didn't want to talk about our, and Professor Taneja mentioned about it. I just want to give you a few brief mentions because I want to wind up, because you will get tired listening to me. You see, when you are talking about prejudice, that I should not be a victim of prejudice, do you know there is a danger that you may be practicing prejudice against yourself? United Nations Development Program did a study on HIV/AIDS in the, I think 2007 and 8. I was part of it because I was working with Community Media on HIV/AIDS. We found through that study that many people don't report problems of HIV/AIDS because of fear of stigma. This stigma is not imposed by outsiders. This is something called self-inflicted stigma, which causes a deep cultural, psychological inferiority complex. Now, if you look at the Indian intellectuals, they're afraid to look at their own cultural intellectual history because they suffer from what is called self-inflicted stigma. You hate yourself, literally. You literally hate yourself. It's like a baby is picked up from a household because the household is poor. The baby is taken to an orphanage, and in the orphanage the baby is given some education. The boy becomes, or girl becomes 15, 16, she wants to meet her mother. Or the matron in the orphanage tells, oh, ab maa ke paas ja rahe ho, wo dying hai pata hai. She's like a witch. She kept you poor. You talk to her, but be careful. She will destroy all that you are today if you become friendly. That is the cultural attitude you have about your own past. If you get into your own philosophical, intellectual history, your modernity will come into doubt. And I am not taking anybody's names, but I have a few friends in JNU. They are still professors. I cannot take anyone's name here. And I said, इसके ऊपर काम तो नहीं सत्या पता है, इस पे काम करने पे फिर flight ticket नहीं मिलेगा विदेश जाने के लिए. Because they are very scared. Whatever may be true, they don't want to talk about it. Many people don't want to talk about it. And they would like to continue to tell things which are politically acceptable to the people, the funding agencies, the Western universities. So they now decide what is our tradition. And you know why that has happened? Because we do not understand Sanskrit anymore. The best Sanskrit scholars are sitting in Germany, in America, They will tell you what is Mahabharata. आप कुछ बोलते हैं, वेंडी धोनीकर बोलेगी नहीं नहीं, लेकिन आपको तो पता नहीं है ना, उसका मतलब मैं आपको बताती हूँ. We are talking about intellectual property rights, but we have destroyed our own intellectual property. We have handed them over, they are interpreting, and anyone wants to, they learn Sanskrit. If you learn Sanskrit, they say it's a Brahmanical knowledge system. They exclude it. So I tell you, do you know the psychological game? The psychological game is to create doubt in the minds of you. Self-doubt in your minds. Please understand that. The only way we can be ourselves if we can overcome that self-doubt. There's a lot of self-doubt. Now, to fight, to win over that self-doubt, if you blindly only shout, you'll also lose your game. Because they are doing hard work. So you have to do hard work. So I just want to give you a couple of examples that these colonial knowledge systems, in the name of modernity, which is continuing, is only strengthening coloniality. The colonial ideas are being reinforced, whether it is literature, and I'm very happy now, we have a professor from English literature here who is in the National Business Academy. So I was very happy to meet a couple of students from Delhi University who are now faculties and they're teaching. So they are working on Bengali literature and Oriental literature, but they are doing PhDs in English. I asked them, have you read Kavya Sastra of India? Kavya Prakash? No, they haven't. They have read prosody in English, all Western traditions. We had a rich tradition here. Have you read Bhakya-Padya? No. The classic literary texts of India, which are in Sanskrit, I tell you, this will take a lifetime to perfect what they did research thousands of years back. Have you spent time on it? No, because they don't understand it. There is a famous book by Sriharsha Mishra, he's from this area only, called Naishadhya Charita. It's one of the toughest texts. It's the great Pancha Mahakavyas. Any great scholar was expected, Naishadhya Charitra padha hai, so they will qualify whether he knows literature or not. How many people who are doing literature have heard the name of this book? Nobody talks about these things. Because it's Brahmanical, right? So you know what? A chow mein company comes here, he wants to sell the noodles, and then he says, paratha sabji khate ho, dehati hai. So they invalidate you. This is called gaslighting. I have to invalidate your own experience. I have to delegitimize your own experience to sell my product. Once you are confused about who you are, that is manipulation, right? That is what is called hypnosis. I would win over you by misleading you, by not telling who am I. I just want to very intelligently destroy your self-confidence. And that is how colonialism has been working in this country for a long time. We do not understand the game. We think that we are on the path of modernity, but the other extreme is equally bad. We cannot strengthen our knowledge traditions by closing our eyes to technology, by closing our eyes to science. So the best way forward is actually being self-aware, where you pursue your goal not by breaking your relationship with present. You don't introduce new chapters called Indian political science, Indian political thought. I'm completely against it. Why can't you study political thought and political theory, but introduce the ideas there? I just want to again, give one. Do you know how the Panchatantra came into being? Anybody has heard in political theory? I studied it, nobody told it to me. There was a king whose sons were very, very rebellious, didn't follow anything, and he was very anxious because he was getting old and his sons had to take care of the country. So he calls Vishnu Sharma, he says, I can take care of them in 6 months. So he tells them stories. Now Panchatantra then is one of the best books on pedagogy. Anybody has worked on it? In India? No. Brahmanical literature. Sanskrit, backward. Nobody touches it. But if you want to actually focus on what are the things that he's talking about in Panchatantra, you will find he's talking about the art of governance, the art of coexistence, the art of communicating with others. But we do not want to read about it. How we read Hitopadesa? We study sociology. So we are ready to it's like circulate and recirculate few hackneyed concepts which are given to us by the West. So they gave us the idea of political culture, Sidney Verba Arman Powell and all, you remember political science, 60s, 70s in India, everybody read about it. Then they talked about nation building, we talked about it, system theory, we talked about it. But whatever is available here, we have never tried to study it. We study about Oedipal complex, we study about Electra complex, we don't study about any complex associated with any mythical character in India. Have you heard of it? Anyone? No. There is enough of cultural resource to, whether it's in psychology or sociology, to get into these classical texts. These are gold mines for research for next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, for hundreds of years. They are making use of it, interestingly. They are masters of it because we don't have access to them, we don't know Sanskrit. So, just to sort of wind it up, there is a beautiful dialogue between father and son in Chandogya Upanishad. Son goes to an ashram, studying there for 12 years, and the father says, do you know where people go after they die, who you are, this, that. He said, my teacher hasn't taught me. And the father, he's scared, my father will send me back to college, so he says, why don't you teach me? And there's a dialogue between father and son. And the father gives one example, another example, and finally says, Tattvamasi, you are that Shvetaguru. He gives it. Now, this is perhaps one very good text, just to take that part, to work on the idea of pedagogy, how it has to be, number one, dialogical, based on illustrations. Start from the particular to reach the universal. I actually look at many of the Akhyaikas in the Upanishads as ideas on which you can work from purely secular point of view to strengthen, expand, deepen your understanding about the concepts on which you are working, whether it is education, whether it is psychological healing. Now you look at Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna talks about this, that, blah, 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 main nahi kar sakta, wo kar sakta, Krishna laughs and says, you are talking like a wise man. And some people have worked on it as what are the lessons in Bhagavad Gita on psychological healing, on counseling. So there are a lot of ideas that you can take and you can take it forward. But just to sort of wind it up, because I don't want to be sort of boring for you. Again, coming back to education, because the director of this institute is a very esteemed professor of education. In India, the education system always started, any book you find starts with an understanding or discussion on what is called Anubandha Chatushtaya. What is Anubandha Chatushtaya? You have to look at what is the Vishaya, what is the Prayojana, why should we study, what is it about. Okay? And it talks about what adhikara, who can study, and then Sambandha, Pratipadya, Pratipalaka Sambandha. What is it talking about? What is trying to establish? Very good theory about education. Any book on pedagogy in education theory where they teach about Anubandha Chatushtaya here? We don't. But our tradition says, without prayojana mandopina pravartate. Even a dull student will never take interest in a subject unless he knows why he is studying it and whether he qualifies. Adhikara in our tradition always means yogyata. It's not about your rights. Adhikari Bheda, Sankaracharya again and again says that same Gita talks about Advaita and Dvaita and different kinds of things. Why? In a classroom, you as teachers know there are bright students who want reference to journals, and you have dull students who have basic understanding lacking, and you have to reach out to them. So you have varied needs, varied qualifications, varied capacities. So there are a lot of things which are available, but सबसे बड़ा मुश्किल ये है, कुछ लोग कहते हैं हमारे पास सब था, कुछ लोग कहते हैं हमारे पास कुछ नहीं है. I think both the parties are confused. You cannot, because neither of these people want to do anything. जो कहता हमारे पास सब था, कुछ करने की जरूरत नहीं है, और जो कहता हमारे कुछ नहीं था, तो पीछे देखने की जरूरत नहीं है. The truth lies somewhere in between. We have to get into a tradition, not to forget about what you're doing, but enrich what we are doing in a much more inclusive way. So therefore, I just want to sort of say that whether it is pedagogy or it is education, I think this, going forward, I just want to say that already a lot of work is being done in the new education policy, has a real focus on traditional knowledge systems. I had gone to Nagaland. Is there anyone from Nagaland? Would you raise your hands? Anyone from Nagaland? Or anybody has any association with Nagaland? No. If you go to public health centers in UP, Bihar or any of the northern states, you have the government managing it. You go to Nagaland, the PHCs are actually managed by communities. Money is given to them. They run the PHCs. The service is given to them. So, we talk about Robert Putnam and we study social capital based on what is written about in Italy and stuff like that, but we don't want to see what is happening in the tribal society in our own country. So in the World Bank Health System project, we introduce that community thing because many things which government will do otherwise, in the Northeast you have a very strong community. So this is last point I want to mention, that is teachers. We see students as consumers of what we know, right? We are giving it to them. We can twist the story. We can use students to harvest local knowledge systems because they are carriers of a lot of information and knowledge systems from their societies. Like, for example, I personally think this is a great opportunity for these great institutions to interact with you and learn from you what are the specific cultural experiences you have. So this is a dialogical two-way interaction where you come and share your experiences and the central leadership here, sitting the policymakers, the thinkers benefit from your experience and then they give you. So it's a two-way beneficial process. So it teaches. If you talk to your students, you can identify new themes of research. And I don't want to sort of be repetitive. So I think the way forward is a very creative process where as leaders you will take it forward in a participative way. Harmony and difference are both necessary for going forward. A garden shall not be a garden if you only have one kind of flowers. We need, God creates this samsara. It's vichitra, isn't it? Why didn't He create all people same? So, diversity is an integral part, and this is what our tradition tells us. That Srashtra created this Vaichitra, and Vaichitra is an integral part of the harmony. At the same time, we never should forget that Swarupataha all of us are one, and all of us are not one, different from one to other. Of course, in Christianity, in Islam, or in Vaishnava and Shaivic traditions, God is the ultimate reality. But in the Advaita Vedanta, where I belong, the ultimate reality is actually without name and form. So, Maya Upadhi Sahita. So, Upadhika Chaitanyam, that is Ishvara. Ishvara wears a magic hat. When Brahman is given a magic hat, he becomes Ishvara, he creates. Brahman is Nirvikara, Nishguna, Nirvishesha, Nirguna, right? Can you talk to Brahman? Are you different from Brahman? If you are different from Brahman, Brahman is not Brahman because Brahman is Sarvatmaka, he is Sarvavidyamana. None of you can be outside of Brahman or out of that ultimate reality. Anybody who says God is above, okay, that God is limited. Why? Because God cannot be above. If he is above, he is not God. God is omnipresent. How can he be above or below? So, what I am saying is we have a lot of rich philosophical ideas. This return to philosophical ideas is not denial of the future, denial of what's going on. It's a creative engagement. I wish you all the best. I'm grateful to all of you for your attention because I personally think, finally I just want to end up by saying, please take care of yourself. Because I have taught and I've always felt it's a thankless job. Students qualify and चले जाते हैं, ना कोई फोन करता है, ना कोई थैंक यू कहता है, कभी एयरपोर्ट पे मिल जाता है, by mistake face to face तो हेलो कर देता है, नहीं कोई इग्नोर करता है. Sometimes you think that you are just doing a thankless job, but remember, you are like a mother. You are all taking care of the society, number one. Number two, remember, this has a great contribution to our spiritual evolution. We have the concept of Panchajagyanas. This is actually Brahmajagya and Rishijagya. You have Pitrujagyanas, Devajagyanas, Pasujagyanas, Bhutajagyanas. But Rishijagya is Jnanajagya. There are two kinds of danas, Arnadanam, but Vidyadanam is Mahattara. You are doing Vidyadanam, you are doing a great job. And this Danam, you are not giving, you are giving to yourself. You remember the dialogue between Maitri and Yajnavalkya, where Yajnavalkya says, the husband loves the husband, the wife loves the husband, not because she loves the husband, but because she loves herself. I love X. First is I, then only you can have the predicate part, right? Therefore he says you should meditate on yourself. So when you are teaching and all that, please remember, don't get tired, love yourself, support yourself.
because you are doing this Rishi Jakya, and that leads to Antakarna Suddhi. You have a sense of satisfaction, there is spiritual growth, and you experience an element of luminosity. When you see somebody is doing well, whether he thanks you or not, she thanks you or not, you have a sense of satisfaction. So with this, I fold my hands to all of you because you are supporting this nation. And let's pray together that we'll be able to do a job. This is not about my speaking, you listening. Because through your silence, through your participation, I'm sure you will take it forward. I wish I could spend more time, but after tomorrow I have to fly back. But I look forward to more opportunities to interact with you. God bless all of you.